The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the June update training for Region 1B. My name is Melissa Devine. I'm the site coordinator for Livingston, Washtenaw, and Monroe County. We will be getting started here in about 5 minutes. We want to give everybody a chance to hop on. But just a few pieces of information for you before we do get started is there is a copy of the slides that you're going to see today in the handout section of this webinar. If you don't have a chance to grab them today from the webinar, just let your site coordinator know, and we can go ahead and get those sent out to you. Also, there is a quick survey at the end of the presentation. So when the webinar is all done, it should automatically pop up into a web browser window for you. If you don't mind just taking that real quick survey for us, letting us know what you thought about the presentation and if there's something specific you would like to see for an update training in Region 1B at a later time, that would be awesome. Also, we're going to ask that everybody stays muted during the presentation, and we will go ahead and do questions at the end of the presentation. So we'll go ahead and do the hand raise situation if you don't mind, raising your hand at the end after the presentation to let us know if you have a question, and we'll go ahead and unmute as we go on. Also, this is a recorded presentation. So if you'd rather ask questions at the end when it's not recorded, please just let us know either by typing in the chat if you need to, or we'll go ahead and just stop the recording and let you know so that you can ask your question then. All right, so we'll get started again with you guys here in about 5 minutes or so, and we'll learn a little bit about the MIBridges Medicaid application. Thanks so much, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the June 2020 update training for Region 1B. Just wanted to give you a few pieces of information before we get started today. We're going to get started here in about a few minutes. Want to let everybody who registered have a chance to hop on. But In the meantime, if you'd like to grab the slides, you can see them in the handout section of this webinar. If you're unable to view them or grab them off of the webinar itself and you'd like to reach out to your site coordinator, we can get those to you after the webinar is done. Also, we ask that you save any of your questions until the end. We will make sure that we address questions at the end of the presentation. We'll do so the same way that they do at Lansing's webinar. So if you press the hand raise button to let us know that you've got a question, we'll go ahead and unmute you to do that. This is a recorded presentation as well, so it is currently being recorded. However, if you'd like to ask your questions when it's not recording, we will let you know when the recording is done. All right, thank you guys so much. We'll get started here in just a few and look forward to doing a Medicaid training with you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Melissa Devine. I am the site coordinator for Livingston, Washtenaw, and Monroe County. And I just want to give you a few quick pieces of information, and then I'm going to go ahead and pass us off to Meredith Buhalis from the Washtenaw Health Plan. And so a few quick things. There is a copy of the slides in the handout section of this webinar. So we ask that if you are unable to get the copy from the webinar itself, go ahead and reach out to your site coordinator. They will be happy to get those out to you after the webinar is all completed. Also, there will be a quick survey at the end of the webinar. It should auto-populate into your web browser window. Just has a couple questions in regards to how you felt about the presentation itself, and then also what kind of other trainings you'd like to see within Region 1B for update trainings. We also ask that you stay muted during the presentation. Any questions that you have in regards to the presentation, we will be happy to address at the end. We will do a similar style to what Lansing does for their monthly webinar. So we'll ask that you click the raise hand button for us. That way we can unmute you and answer your question. There is also the opportunity, though, to type questions into the question box of the webinar as well. And if you don't mind saving all the questions till the end for us, though, that pertain to the slides, that would be great. We'll go ahead and address those at the end. And also, I think we're pretty much ready to go. So if you happen to need anything, feel free to reach out to your site coordinator during the process. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass this to Meredith Buhalis, who is here to present for us today about the MIBridges Medicaid application. So Meredith, whenever you are ready.
Okay, well, good morning. My name is Meredith Buhalis, and I work at the Washtenaw Health Plan in Washtenaw County. I am the program manager and have been doing public benefits and Medicaid advocacy for the last 5 years or so. This presentation is about how to do a Medicaid application, looking at the particular screens and how you go through the MIBridges system. I did want to just say a couple things. The Washtenaw Health Plan is a sort of a unique advocacy organization as well as a health plan, or kind of a lot of things. We are located across the courtyard from DHS. I don't work for DHS, but we do communicate with them a lot and do a lot of public benefits access for them. So usually I do this part of the training after people have talked about eligibility and how do you determine whether someone is eligible for Medicaid. And we do a lot of Healthy Michigan Plan enrollment, which I know is not what you do. We also do aged and disabled Medicaid enrollment. So that's what I'm going to talk about mostly today. So this, let's just get started. Here it, let's see. So if I click on there. So these are things that we usually go over when we are talking with a client for the first time. Who is in your tax household? What's your age, your income, and your immigration status? I think you covered this in another training, or this is already information that you have for your clients. I will discuss these things a little bit more in depth as we go through the application, as they are related to particular screens. So how many people live in your household, or how many people are on the tax return? Who counts as a dependent? Who doesn't count as a dependent, single or married? For most of your applications, I believe that it is only single or married. Most of your clients don't have dependents, so that is a pretty easy. That one's easy. Again, age, is anyone over the age of 65 or disabled? Most of your clients are going to be 65 or disabled. These other categories are for different types of Medicaid. When we talk about income, we talk about regular job, regular pay stub income. I don't know, sometimes you probably have people who are working and sometimes you don't. So we always like, DHS likes to see 30 days of the last 30 days of your regular job, regular pay stubs. Self-employed people have a Schedule C, and that would tell you the income for the year. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But if you're self-employed, you do need the tax return that will give you the adjusted gross income for the individual, and DHS requires sort of an annual picture of that. But you divide that into 12 and put it in as a monthly income. Dependent income, if that was part of your client's income, it's not counted under 12,000. And then these next two, and then Social Security benefits for 65 or older or disabled, RSDI, that is counted. And if someone gets SSI, they would also have Social Security income. This last part is Social Security benefit for a child is not counted. Immigration. When we talk about immigration, we talk about U.S. citizens and whether or not they're eligible for Medicaid or the marketplace. You have permanent resident green card holders who are less than 5 years or more than 5 years. A permanent resident green card holder who is less than 5 years is not eligible for full Medicaid. So they would not be eligible, and they're also not eligible for Medicare at that point. I don't know how much interaction you have with immigrants, but they would only be eligible for emergency services only, and would need to go to the marketplace to get health care if you are a permanent resident green card holder for less than 5 years. Once you have become a permanent resident green card holder for more than 5 years, you would be eligible, if you're income eligible, for Medicaid. You are also eligible for Medicare, the Medicare Savings Program, if you are income and asset eligible. If you have a work permit, then you are eligible for the marketplace or employer insurance, not eligible for Medicaid or the Medicare. So this is the necessary client information. Contact information, required proofs, pay stubs, Social Security, SSI, RSDI award letters, pension, retirement statements, bank statements, photo ID, driver's license, insurance ID cards, those are Medicare cards, and proof of your medical expenses. Bank statements is meant to show your assets. So if your clients have other assets, including second homes, other cars, RVs, motorcycles, those count as assets, and most likely at that point they would be over the limit for the asset limit for Medicaid or the Medicare Savings Program. For medical expenses, you would need to provide proof of those, that somebody is paying those. DHS doesn't always accept just the fact that you have received a bill for that. So sometimes you have to show proof that someone is paying for that. And I'll say one other word about bank statements. Any bank account that has your name on it, the client's name on it, needs to be turned into DHS. Sometimes people have accounts or they're on other accounts for grandchildren or other people. They have access to that money as an asset. So for DHS considers that their asset. Okay, so here we are at the application. So when you go to the MIBridges, michigan.gov/MIBridges, you get right now you get a COVID-19 warning message, but this is what the page looks like. And you have two choices right off the bat, login or register. We are gonna go through the register at this point. So the first thing you see when you hit register is account registration. You need the name, date of birth, phone number, address, Social Security number, Medicaid ID number. People who have, if anyone has ever had Medicaid, or if they had Medicaid before they turned 65 or before they were determined disabled, it's very useful to put into this screen here. That will help link the information, the client, to any case information that DHS already has. The address should be the home address. The county needs to be the county where the person is going to be living. So if people have mailing addresses and things like that, this is not the place to put that. And then down at the bottom, you say, I agree, and there's a I'm not a robot question, which is, in this case, which of the following is part of the body, tree, leg, or rock? So you answer those questions, and then the next screen, and then it says account registration successful. The next screen will be choosing a username and a password and answering 3 security questions. In my organization, we have a sheet that we hand out to clients that has this information on it, username, password, and we write down the security questions because even though people think they will remember them, they very often do not. So that's how we do that. The username just has to be, it can be any, I think it has to be at least 8 letters. The password has to be at least 8 letters, has to include 1 uppercase, 1 lowercase, 1 number, and it can include some special characters, but it's not required. Sometimes we do, because we have people who varying ages, we write it down on a sheet, and I often encourage people to either write it down where they keep their passwords or take a photo with their phone so they always have it. Answers to security questions, the same kind of thing. The security questions are not that hard. Where did you go to school? What's your mother's maiden name? They're not great, but it's always good to choose questions that people are going to answer the same every time. So once you have chosen your username and password, the next step is to verify that the client is who they say they are. They are using information from Equifax here and looking at a credit report to generate these questions. They are not doing a credit ask, so it won't show up on your credit report, on a credit report or anything like that, but they are pulling information from there. Answer the questions to your best of your ability, or the client's ability. There are a few problems with that that can happen. People who have no credit may not be able to verify their identity because there is no information with Equifax. That tends to be immigrants more often than just anyone else, but who have not had any bank accounts or anything in this country. If someone has ever been the victim of identity theft or fraud, then they may have frozen their credit, and this will not work usually. Sometimes people said that their credit is frozen and this does work, but more often than not, people are not. If someone has their credit frozen, then this step is not going to work. If that doesn't work, it gives you a phone number to call and says, if you're having problems with this, call this phone number. The unfortunate thing about that phone number is that somebody does answer it, but they can't do anything. They can't verify identity over the phone. They can't, they can tell you, what they will tell you is that if you have been locked out because you tried to answer the questions too many times and they were incorrect, that you can wait 24 hours and try again. And then lastly, but they don't have any way to change any of the answers or help you fix this step of the process. So the only way to get, if you can't verify the identity through this process, is you can get a manual verification at a local DHS office. The person would have to go there, bring their ID, a photo ID, and bring their MIBridges user ID and password. And then you ask for a manual identity verification at the desk where you go. There are only certain caseworkers who are certified to do that. And I always suggest that people try to log into their account before they leave the DHS office if they are in fact going to go and do this. going to do that locally in the office. If you don't, if the identity is not verified, you can still do an application and upload documents. You just don't get to see the letters that DHS is sending you, and there's some other interactive features you won't have, but it doesn't mean that you can't do the application. Okay, identification verified, off we go. And I just said that, I didn't know that was the next slide. Okay, so once you have verified the identity, then this is the next screen that you see. This is the dashboard, and right here you can see that you have notifications, apply for benefits, help me find resources, explore resources, and then I have an orange box around the sign up for notifications. I find this is really helpful with a lot of our clients because they can use their text, their phone number to get texts when there is new information in their MIBridges account. And that will help people who are having trouble getting their mail. It lets them know that DHS wants something from them. So there's a little opt-in blue button there. You click on that, and then you put in a PIN number because it sends a verification text to the phone number, and you put in that PIN number, and then they're set up for that. There are also ways to, you can also set it up for an email at a different, for email notifications at a different point. So then I talked a little bit about up at the top here. Here's the home button. This will take you back to this screen. There's the apply for benefits button. This benefits right here menu has upload documents, see previous applications. It's got a lot more than just, and you can see current benefits in there. The resources and the settings are also, resources, I never use that, but maybe someone would be interested in that. In the settings, you can, your name, phone number, and contact information will show up in the settings. If you change someone's address or phone number or name in that menu, it does not change it with DHS. A DHS caseworker has to change your address. So you have to submit a change report if you need somebody's address changed. Changing things in the settings, I'm not sure exactly what that does, but it doesn't get you a new address or updated phone number to your DHS caseworker. Okay, then here we are at the next part, which is apply for benefits. So we always suggest that people apply for healthcare separately because there are, when people are applying for Medicaid Healthy Michigan plan, it's income only. In your case, it probably would not matter if you were also applying for food assistance or healthcare coverage or state emergency relief also with those clients because those are income and asset tested programs. So the food assistance, so if you are going to select, select the boxes here of what applications you're doing, most likely it'll just be the healthcare coverage. Okay, so we've selected a healthcare coverage, and here is our first page. It says, what language do you prefer to speak? English, Spanish, Arabic, or other. What language do you prefer to write? English, Spanish, Arabic, or other. If you select Spanish for the written, then the client will get letters written in Spanish. Arabic, maybe. There are no other options from DHS at this point. Do you need to be contacted at a hearing assistance number? Yes, no. And then the next is, what communications assistance do you need? If someone needs an interpreter or sign language or a listening device, this is where you're going to put that in, and that will enable the caseworker, if they need to contact the client, to know how the best to do that. All right, and then you are going to add the client here. So name, date of birth, social security number. It's important to put the social security number in here because DHS uses some data matching in the cloud, and the social security number is what they use to do that. So here I said in the beginning page, you can set up for this, you can request the text notifications in the beginning. And here is where you could do both text notifications, and you can also request to receive an email notification. These are only notifications that there is new information in your MIBridges account. You're not going to receive any letters or any information about verifications or other requests from the caseworker or about your benefits. It's only going to say, go check your MIBridges account. I'm not sure if you work with clients who are homeless, but if you have a client who is homeless, that you can indicate that here. There's a little bit of trickiness about you want the county where the mailing address is and the county that they reside in to be where they want to get their Medicaid. Sometimes people have mailing addresses in other counties. It's best to add that later and let the case be assigned to the county where the person wants to get their services. And then county of residence. So then the next part is add household members. And so that would be, so now let's begin. They start with you, or the client. Which programs are you requesting? Healthcare coverage, male, female, US citizen or not, married, yes or no, race and ethnicity are options. See, I don't remember. Okay, so if you're a US citizen, then you're just going to go forward. If you say no, then there's another screen that is going to ask for more information. This is, the next part is adding people who are in your household. So if your client is married, then they need to click the add new member, and you will be adding the spouse. And you do always have to add the spouse, because if single versus married, those are different income and asset limitations, and people who are for Medicare savings program and Medicaid for aged and disabled, it really is just married or single. So introduce the other member of your household. I have some other information about there if you were doing for Medicaid Healthy Michigan plan. And then you answer those same questions about the spouse. Are they applying for health care, male, female, citizen, not a citizen? Here I answered the question no, and you can see it's asking for a social security number, which you should put in, ethnicity and race optional. And then it says who is married and who are they married to? And does this person live in the home? I have a little note over here on the side. I'm not sure this would is going to be an issue for many of you, but if someone is not eligible for full Medicaid, meaning they're not a citizen or a permanent resident more than 5 years, it's best not to put the Social Security number in there. What happens is that someone who has a Social Security number can be approved automatically for full Medicaid. And the mechanism is they haven't fixed that at DHS. So we bypass that by not putting the Social Security number in if someone is not eligible for full Medicaid. That's up to you. You can do that. It can take months to get DHS to reverse that. And it seems like it would be a good idea for someone to have full Medicaid, even if they aren't eligible for it, but it really messes things up because someone who is not eligible for full Medicaid should be on the marketplace. And if you're on the marketplace and you have full Medicaid, that causes a big problem and can be very costly in the end. Again, the relationship, who lives in the home, say that it's best to keep married people in the same home unless there's a really good reason to say no. And the reason to say no would be probably domestic violence, something like that. Qualified immigration status. If you say someone is not a citizen but has qualified immigration status, this is what they're gonna ask for. Select anyone who has qualified immigration status. You have to provide proof of the immigration status, and that would be a permanent resident green card. Always upload the front and the back. People with a visitor visa, which is has the code B1 or B something else, are not eligible for full Medicaid, but would be eligible for emergency services only, which will cover emergency services in the emergency room and nothing else. No follow-up care, no hospitalizations, anything like that. And then I have a little bit about pregnancy and ESO, emergency services only for mom's Medicaid. You can, if you have that situation, you would put that here. So here, this is where you will add the document type and the document, which is why you want people to bring that permanent resident green card with them, the alien number, the card number, the date of US entry, and then there's some other questions about that. Alien number is also the USCIS number, and the card number is on the back of the permanent resident green card. You kind of have to look at the reflection, and they start with LIN, MSC, and there are a couple other like alphanumeric codes that go with that USCIS number. More details about the household members. Here you would be answering if people are American Indian, Alaska Native, or if they have other, which are other health insurances. And for those programs, people can also apply for Medicaid with those, with Indian Health Services. So there's that. Household details. Next section. So then this is asking about the tax return. So for healthcare, the household size is the tax household. So for almost all your clients, it would be single or married. Who's filing? Filing jointly. Are they claiming any dependents? You want to let DHS know how many people are in the house, but only if they're claiming them as dependents. I'm not sure. I don't believe many of you work with grandparents who have grandchildren, but that can, you can put that information into an application and should if that is the case. Who's being claimed as a dependent? So people you can claim as dependent, you're providing 50% or more of their support for 6 months or more. That's the IRS rule. Do not add dependents in other countries. Okay, so this next part, does anyone in your household, the household situation, does anyone else have in the household have a disability or a physical, mental, or emotional health condition? If someone has been determined disabled, you'll answer this question yes. If someone has not been determined disabled, this will start a, but is in the, so if someone has not been determined disabled, you want to think about whether or not you want to click this button. This will generate an application from DHS for DHS temporary disability or something like that, and that can be a lot more paperwork than is necessary. So make sure that you answer that, think about that question before you just say yes. So is anyone temporarily absent from the home? Has anyone served in the military or armed services? I don't ever answer that question yes, because it doesn't have, for most of the people that we work with, it doesn't have any bearing on whether or not you're on the benefits from Medicaid. Was anyone in foster care? You don't work with foster care folks, really. Parents and child. So this is where you would answer questions about pregnancy. Is anyone a non-parent caregiver? That could be, again, that question, those questions about grandparents and grandchildren who are taking care of grandchildren. a foster parent or adopted child. So anyone who is a refugee or asylee, if someone is a refugee or an asylee, they can receive Medicaid before they meet the 5-year permanent residency, as long as they are income eligible. So the USCIS codes that would be on the permanent resident card are AS or RE followed by a number. Domestic violence, if anyone is currently a victim of domestic violence, you want to answer that here. That mostly is relevant to situations where one parent does not want the state to go after someone, or needs to know that, and if they are requesting child support from the parent who's not in the home. So income, here is where you're going to add all sources of income. There is a nice list there. I have down at the bottom, sometimes people are like, well, my grandma gives me $50 a month. And my question is always, are you telling the IRS about it? Then don't tell DHS about it. So there's that. Though also, income that you can't prove is not a good idea to tell DHS about, but that would be those kind of cash situations, and those are usually considered gifts and are not really income anyway in DHS's eyes. So Social Security letters, pay stubs, taxes, pension, retirement statements, self-employment statements, letters from employers, verification of employment, real estate or business income, any income that you're reporting on the tax return. So here we have, this is where you will select yes or no for each of these categories. Employment, if someone's not employed, you say no. Self-employment, if someone is self-employed, you're going to say yes. Additional income, this includes unemployment, disability, alimony. This is where you say yes for Social Security or an SSI, veterans benefits, and also additional income is where you put retirement and pension payments. Well, I said that. Change in income. If anyone has had a change in income in the last, or employment in the last 30 days, I don't think that would be very many of your clients. You can put that information in here if you want. And monthly income change. This part here, this monthly income change has to do with self-employment. If someone is self-employed, DHS looks at their income annually, as I said previously in the very beginning. So we'll talk about that. But for many people, that means that if you do tax assistance, for instance, you make all your money from January to April or May, and then you don't have any income the rest of the year. But on your taxes, you just have one Schedule C that shows all the money that you made. So you need to report that annual amount as your self-employment for the year. I think that might be confusing, and I'm happy to answer questions about that at the end. I feel like when I do this and we have questions in there, I usually spend a little bit more time here. There are some things that you don't count. SSI is not counted, but you do need to report it. Veterans disability payments are not counted as income, but need to be reported. Workers' comp and child support that's received is not counted, but you do need to report it. MAGI income, the modified adjusted gross income, doesn't really apply here. That is really for Medicaid for people under 64 and not disabled. Do not, I have a little note here that says, do not assume that DHHS's system will process their eligibility correctly. We always teach people to determine whether or not someone is eligible before they do the application so that we know what the outcome is going to be. That's why we're talking about income, assets, all of that before you do this application is always a good idea. Okay, employment income. This is the gross income, not which is pre-tax. It's not the net income. The last 30 days of employment. So if people are paid every 2 weeks, 2 checks, 4 checks, twice a month, 2 checks. Starting or ending a job, wait until you have a paycheck to turn in as proof of your employment, or get proof that from your employer that you no longer work there. I don't know if there are any questions. Well, anyway, yeah. And then the next, self-employment. So here's where you are going to use the adjusted gross income, or the net profit, which on 2018 taxes was line 7 of the Schedule C. The net profit is after the expenses are deducted, and you are going to report it as a monthly net profit. So you take that adjusted gross income from Schedule C, you divide it by 12, and that is the monthly net profit that is reported to DHS. This is also where you put this monthly income change, you say yes. This is frequently not processed correctly by DHS, so figuring out if someone is eligible and then following up on that is always a good idea. So here is what self-employment looks like. Who is it? What type of work do they do? All right, so this is something that I have learned over the years. And even though DHS keeps updating their system, they do not. So what happens is this monthly income before expenses, they ask you to put in here. And then they ask you to put the monthly expenses in here. And you would think that the system is going to take the income, subtract the expenses because they don't count, and use what is left over. The system does not automatically do that. So what I do is in the monthly income before expenses, I put the monthly income after expenses, and I put the monthly expenses in as 0. Now, when I do that, I never do that unless I have the Schedule C and the tax return for the person, and I know that I'm going to upload that at the end. I'm not trying to trick DHS or anything like that, but the automatic processing that happens on the application will deny somebody right away based on the incorrect income calculation. So I report it the way the system will do it correctly, and then include the proof that shows that that's the income for the client. You can also, sometimes people have multiple Schedule Cs. If you have a cleaning business and you also do carpentry, then you add those separately because they are separate Schedule Cs in the tax return. Additional income, this is where you say yes for retirement, Social Security benefits, unemployment, pension and retirements. For healthcare, it's only the income that you report on your tax return. And we'll look at that, I think, on the next slide here. Oh, sorry, I might have gone. Did I go one ahead? I need to go back again there, I think. No, okay, so additional income, this is where you say yes, you add each of the additional income. So if when someone's getting Social Security and they're also getting a pension, then you're gonna put both of those in there. Yeah, and then we can go to the next one, Melissa, there. So if someone has a change in income, you can put that in. DHS pretty much looks at the last 30 days of income for any regular employment, Social Security benefits, things like that. Change in income here, the details that you can put in there. You know, I don't usually put this information in unless the client has a separation letter. That's the first thing DHS is going to ask, is for proof of whatever you are reporting. So it's best for the client to have a termination or some other kind of verification of employment or lack of employment if they had a job and lost it, or if their hours have reduced. Okay. Here's where you can put, this doesn't really count for, I don't think for very many of your clients. This is for people who do contract and temporary work. You can put the monthly income change in there. Someone's income changes month to month, and you can put if their total income is for the year. People who need to do this are people who do are like do landscape or house painting in the summer, college students, internships, sometimes short-term academic appointments, things like that. If the income is concentrated in one part of the year and you want them to just use that income to for the determination, then you would do that here. Expenses for, it says for healthcare, most of this does not count. That's for MAGI. Medicaid, in your cases, the medical expenses would count. And this is MAGI Medicaid, but so then some of these other expenses are relevant for the aged and disabled Medicaid. So court-ordered expenses, tax deductible if you're paying, if someone's still paying student loan interest or other tax deductible expenses. If you have somebody who's recently divorced, divorces can be different now. So who is, basically alimony doesn't really count anymore, but that depends on the divorce decree. So this is only people who were divorced after January 1st, 2019. And now we have questions related to the healthcare program. So, did anyone have insurance through a job and lose it in the last 3 months? I rarely answer this question. I mean, you just say no. But the next question, does anyone need help paying for medical bills from the last 3 months? That you can definitely say yes, and DHS will go back 3 months retroactively. In the case of the Medicare Savings Program, they only do that for SLIMB and ALMB. They don't do that for QIMB. Don't ask me why. It's a mean and bad rule, but it is a rule. So in that case, it is the client may get a retroactive Medicaid application, which would need to be filled out with medical expenses and income information and asset information. Does anyone in the household have a job that offers health insurance? Medicaid automatically goes out and looks for other insurance for anyone who has Medicaid. So I don't often answer that yes, I usually just say no. These last two, does anyone live in a medical facility or nursing home? You would know the answer yes or no. And then the last one, you definitely want to check yes if someone is applying for the Medicare Savings Program, because this is where that triggers DHS to say, oh, we need this information to process this for this person. So this is a little bit about the retroactive coverage. Someone who is an adult needs to have medical expenses for the month in which they are applying for the retroactive coverage. So you need to have the bills that show that you incurred expenses. Children are automatically approved if retroactive coverage is requested, but adults must include a medical bill when they do that. So this is where you, Medicare premium payment assistance. So Medicare Savings Program, well, you all know this, is type of Medicaid for people who have Medicare. You have to be eligible for Medicare to be eligible for Medicare Savings Program. Income and asset tested, and the client will receive a healthcare supplemental questionnaire, which is DHS 1004, that must be filled out and returned with verifications of income and assets. In our office, when we do applications for people who have Medicare, we often have this form already. We have this questionnaire, and we either show it to the client or we help them fill it out so that it, and explain to them the proofs that they're going to need to have with that. I won't say that we never do Medicaid or Medicare Savings Program applications without it, but it really does make increases our success rate with our clients getting the Medicare Savings Program. If they bring in the proofs, we have them know that this supplemental questionnaire is coming to them, because from the date of application, it almost always has a 10-day due date. So they know that they're going to get something, and this is what it's going to look like. We need to fill it out. Sometimes clients give me all their proofs, we fill it out, and they sign it and leave it with me until I get a case number, because if the client's never had Medicaid, they won't have a case number yet. So those are some things we do in our office. I know you will have your own ways of doing that, but I do find that healthcare supplemental questionnaire it's really good to show clients, you're going to get this, you're going to need to fill it out, and you're going to have to return it with your income and asset verifications within 10 days. So final details, you're almost done. So you can go back and you can't see it on this screen, but over here, if you go back, you can see all of the sections that we saw before, and you can go back and edit any section before it's submitted. There is a question here, is anyone incarcerated? So there is that question. And then there are these questions. Is anyone registered to vote? This question, to make it easier to determine your healthcare eligibility in future years, do you agree to the use of IRS data for automatic renewals? This never happens for clients who have the Medicare Savings Program. Every year you have to renew that, and you have to turn in your verifications of income and asset again. If you want to say yes to it, you can, but it's not nobody's gonna be automatically renewed unless they have SSI. So those are the people who get automatically renewed. And that's not very many. So the next questions, do you want anyone else to act for or represent you in this case? That would never be you. That would be if someone's coming with a daughter, or someone else who is a caretaker who has power of attorney for healthcare or other financial decisions for the client. That would be who that person is, but that's never you. So what else would you like us to know? Anything that you could not add or explain in the application, you can put here. Keep it simple, really just very simple. DHS can't deal with, can't deal with information from the past or information in the future. They need to know what's happening right now. So I always tell people, ask it the question that they're asking as it is today. So if there was anything that you didn't feel was communicated in the rest of the application, you can certainly put it in here, but keep it as simple as possible. And if it's something about money, income, or assets, make sure you have paper to back it up. And by that, I mean you have some sort of verification of an account or something else, or whatever the asset or income is that you need to explain. This last is the responsibilities and the legal part. I have a nice little summary that I say, and always invite people to read this if they would like. And then I always say, I'm going to type your name as your signature and then submit the application. You will get, after you submit the application, you'll see some little spinning something, most likely. Pretty much everybody who does an application for healthcare supplemental question, or for the Medicare Savings Program, will say the individual's name, it'll say healthcare coverage, and the status will always be pending, because they won't approve you until they have that healthcare supplemental questionnaire and the verifications of income and assets turned in. On occasion, it does stay approved, but I don't imagine that will be very many of your clients. Okay. All right, so that's the end of my presentation. You are always, anyone is welcome to call me, or I also have an email, and I can always, will respond to emails and calls if you have more questions, but I think now, Melissa, we can open it up to questions if you'd like.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Meredith. We really appreciate you doing this presentation today. I am going to go ahead and stop the recording for everyone so that if you have questions and you're not wanting to ask while it's recording, then you can do so.